The lighter clicked in the darkness. Master Sergeant Robert Henley sat alone on the firebase wall, watching the flame dance in the pre-dawn cold. The Zippo was older than him, older than the war, older than the reasons men gave for dying in places like this. Engraved on the side, worn smooth by 40 years of thumbs, Chief Warrant Officer Robert Henley Sr., KIA 17, 1971, Ashau Valley. Doc had been 8 years old when they folded that flag into his mother's shaking hands. He never knew his father, never heard his voice, never learned what made him laugh or what kept him awake at night in the jungle. All he had was this lighter, a photograph of a young man in dress greens, and a purple heart in a frame collecting dust. The flame guttered in a sudden breeze. Doc clicked it shut. Around him, forward operating base Sentinel was beginning to wake. Generators rumbled to life. Diesel smoke mixed with dust and the smell of breakfast MREs heating in their pouches. Soldiers moved through the darkness like ghosts, preparing for another day in a war that had already lasted twice as long as Vietnam. Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires, they called it. The Soviets had learned that lesson in blood, the British before them. Now it was America's turn to pour young men into these mountains and hope something good came out the other side. Doc was 58 years old. This was his final deployment. 32 years in uniform, 4 wars, more friends in Arlington than in his address book. He wanted to go home. But first, he had to keep his promise. The lighter clicked open again, flame steady in the darkness. Somewhere behind him, a door opened. Footsteps approached, light, confident. The walk of someone who still believed they were immortal. Figured I'd find you here. Doc didn't turn around. He knew the voice. Captain Elena Castellano, call sign Hawk. The best team leader he'd served under in 3 decades. Can't sleep, Skipper. Can I ever? Hawk settled onto the wall beside him, her M4 slung across her back. She was 32 years old. Hispanic. 5'6" and 140 pounds of muscle and willpower. 2 deployments in Iraq, 1 in Syria, now Afghanistan. She saw the lighter. Your father's? Yeah. You always hold it before missions. Doc closed the Zippo, slipped it into his pocket. Reminds me why I'm here. And why's that? Because he never came home. Because his war never ended. It just moved to a different grid square. Doc looked at her. Because I made a promise at his grave that I'd serve with honor and bring my men home alive. Your men, Hawk smiled. I'm your commanding officer, Doc. You're 32, Skipper. I got socks older than you. Then why do you follow my orders? Because you're a good officer. Because you give a damn. And because you haven't gotten anyone killed yet. He paused. Yet. The smile faded from Hawk's face. They sat in silence, watching the eastern sky lighten from black to deep blue. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed. Strange sound in a war zone. Reminder that people actually lived here. That this wasn't just a battlefield, but someone's home. Colonel wants us in the TOC at 0600, Hawk said. New mission. Figured. We've been sitting on our hands for 3 days. How's the team? Doc considered the question. Team Shadow. 5 souls. All that stood between good men and the dark. Preachers in the chapel. Been there since, 400, reading his Bible, struggling with something. The twin brother thing? Always the twin brother thing. Marcus Jr. died because he missed a shot. Now our preacher won't miss in training, but downrange? Doc shook his head. He's in his own head. That's dangerous for a sniper. And Ghost? Ghost is Ghost. Quiet as death, sharp as a blade. That boy doesn't talk much, but when he moves, it's like watching water flow. Pure instinct. JJ? Young, eager, calls her daddy every other day. Gunny Rodriguez raised her right, but she's still got that invincibility complex, thinks she'll live forever. She's 24, Doc. I thought I'd live forever at 24. Yeah, well, Afghanistan has a way of teaching people they're mortal. Hawk stood, checked her weapon out of habit. Brass check, safety check, magazine seated. The ritual of soldiers who'd seen friends die because of jammed guns. Briefing in 40, get some chow, you look like hell. I'm 58. I'm supposed to look like hell. You're supposed to retire, old man. After this one, Doc pulled out the Zippo again. Didn't light it, just held it. After I finished what he started. Hawk looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. She understood. They all had ghosts. The Tactical Operations Center smelled like stale coffee and stress. Maps covered every wall. Screens glowed with drone feeds and thermal imagery. Radio chatter provided a constant backdrop of static and clipped military jargon. Colonel William Patterson stood at the main table studying a map of the Kunar province. He was 62 years old, gray-haired, lean. His left hand was prosthetic, high-end military issue that looked almost real until you noticed it didn't quite move right. He'd lost the original hand in Vietnam, 1970. Grenade in a tunnel complex near Cu Chi. Medics saved his life but couldn't save all 5 fingers. Patterson looked up as Team Shadow filed in. 5 soldiers, 5 specialists, the best of the best. Captain Elena Castellano, call sign Hawk, team leader, Ranger qualified, expert marksman. 2 kids at home she talked to every night via satellite phone. Master Sergeant Robert Henley, call sign Doc, age 58, senior NCO, combat medic cross-trained as sniper, the oldest man in theater, the glue that held the team together. Staff Sergeant Marcus Odom, call sign preacher, primary sniper, former seminary student who joined the Army after 9/11 because he believed God called him to protect the innocent. His twin brother, also a sniper, died in Fallujah 7 years ago. Preacher wore both sets of dog tags around his neck. Sergeant David Nakamura, call sign Ghost, reconnaissance specialist, Japanese-American, 3rd-generation military. His grandfather earned a Medal of Honor with the 442nd Regimental Combat Team in World War II. Ghost had the old man's Tanto knife on his belt. Never spoke unless he had something important to say. Corporal Jennifer Rodriguez, call sign JJ, spotter and communications specialist, 24 years old, youngest on the team, daughter of a retired Marine gunnery sergeant, grew up on military bases, joined straight out of high school because she wanted to prove women could do this job. 5 people, 1 team. Patterson waited until the door closed. Then he spoke. We have a situation. He tapped the map. A red circle appeared around a grid square 15 kilometers north. Firebase Cobra, established 6 months ago, 47 personnel, 1 understrength platoon plus support staff. Their mission is route security and presence patrols. Patterson pulled up photos on the main screen. Young faces, American faces, smiling for the camera before missions. Some of those faces had black borders around them now. In the past 3 weeks, we've lost 5 patrols in this sector. 23 KIA, 41 WIA. The pattern is consistent. Well-planned ambushes, coordinated fires, professional execution. Preacher studied the photos. IEDs? Every single one, followed by small arms fire from elevated positions. The enemy knows our patrol routes, knows our timing, knows exactly where to hit us for maximum effect. Ghost spoke, voice quiet. Inside information? We've considered it, but signals intelligence shows the enemy has an extensive observation network. They're watching Firebase Cobra, learning our patterns. They don't need a mole when they can see everything we do. Hawk leaned over the map. What's the intel picture on the enemy commander? Patterson's expression darkened. That's where it gets interesting. We've been intercepting communications. The enemy fighters refer to someone they call the teacher. He's organizing the various militant factions in this sector, creating a unified command structure. And his tactics, Patterson looked at Doc. His tactics are Soviet era, reconnaissance pull, ambush in depth, fire and fade. This isn't Taliban playbook. This is Cold War doctrine. Doc felt something cold settle in his gut. Soviet trained, that's our assessment, and possibly former Afghan army from the 80s. Someone who fought the Soviets and learned from them. Now he's using those lessons against us. JJ raised her hand, young, still following classroom habits. Sir, what's our mission? You 5 are going in. Your objective is threefold. 1, identify and eliminate the enemy commander. 2, dismantle his observation network. 3, protect Firebase Cobra from the next attack. Patterson looked at each of them. Intelligence suggests the enemy is planning something big. A direct assault on Firebase Cobra within the next week. We need you in position before that happens. Rules of engagement? Hawk asked. Standard ROE, positive ID required, but I'm giving you latitude. If you identify a threat to American forces, your weapon is free. Support available? Artillery from here, close air support if weather permits. Medevac on standby. But you'll be operating 15 clicks from the nearest friendlies. If things go sideways, help is 30 minutes out, maybe longer. The team exchanged glances. 30 minutes was an eternity in combat. Doc studied the map, traced the valley with his finger. The terrain was brutal, mountains on 3 sides. One road in and out, Firebase Cobra sat on high ground, but it was surrounded by even higher ground. A bowl, a kill zone. Perfect place for an ambush. Perfect place to die. When do we insert? Hawk asked. Tonight, 2200 hours. Chinook will drop you 8 clicks out. You'll hump in on foot, establish your observation post, and begin surveillance. Questions? Preacher spoke up. Sir, what if we can't identify the commander? What if he stays hidden? Patterson's prosthetic hand twitched. Old wound, old pain. Then you make his life hell until he shows himself. Eliminate his spotters, destroy his network, force him to react. A commander who can't control his battlefield is a commander who has to expose himself. And if Firebase Cobra gets hit before we find him, then you do what snipers do, Staff Sergeant. You protect those who can't protect themselves. Patterson looked at all of them. 47 Americans are depending on you. They don't know your names. They don't know you exist. But you're the only thing standing between them and a massacre. The weight of those words settled over the team. 47 lives, 5 soldiers. Gear up, Patterson said. Wheels up at 2200. Dismissed. The team filed out. Doc lingered. Something on your mind, Master Sergeant. Doc pulled out the Zippo, showed it to Patterson. The colonel's eyes focused on the engraving. His expression shifted. Recognition. Your father? Yes, sir. First Cav, a Shao Valley. I knew him. Patterson's voice was quiet. We were in different units, but I knew him. Good man, brave soldier. He died for nothing, sir. We lost that war. He died doing his duty. That's never nothing. Doc closed the Leicester. These Soviet tactics. You said reconnaissance pull, fire and fade. That's exactly what the NVA used in the A show. I know. My father's after action reports. I've read every one, cover to cover. This enemy commander, whoever he is, he's using the same playbook. Patterson nodded slowly. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Sir, I need to ask, what if I can't do this? I'm 58. I'm tired. What if I'm not fast enough anymore? The colonel looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war. Doc, I'm 62. I lost my hand 50 years ago in a tunnel that doesn't exist on any map. I wake up every morning and that hand still hurts. Phantom pain, the docs call it. He held up the prosthetic. But I'm still here, still serving, still fighting. You know why? No, sir. Because those kids out there need old men who remember what war costs. They need experience, wisdom. They need someone who's seen enough death to value life. Patterson put his good hand on Doc's shoulder. Your father didn't come home, but you will, and you'll bring your team with you. That's not a pep talk, Master Sergeant. That's an order. Doc nodded, slipped the Zippo back in his pocket. Yes, sir. Night came fast in the mountains. Team Shadow loaded onto the CH-47 Chinook at exactly 2200 hours. The helicopter crouched on the tarmac like a predator, rotors beginning to spin. The whine of turbines built to a roar. Doc did his final checks. Body armor, plates front and back, 30 pounds. M4 carbine, 14 magazines, 420 rounds, 15 pounds. Medical kit, enough to treat 4 casualties, 8 pounds. Water, 3 liters, 6 pounds. Food, MREs for 5 days, 4 pounds. Radio, batteries, night vision, another 10 pounds. M110 sniper rifle. Suppressor, 10 magazines of 7.62 NATO, 20 pounds. Total weight, over 80 pounds. He was 58 years old. He could barely feel his knees anymore. The team sat in the red glow of the cabin lights, each lost in private thoughts. JJ checked her radio for the 10th time. Preacher read his Bible, lips moving silently. Ghost sat perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing slow. Meditation. Hawk looked at each of them, made eye contact, nodded. They were ready. The loadmaster gave the signal. Ramp coming up. Secure for flight. The Chinook lurched into the air. Through the window, Doc watched Firebase Sentinel fall away. Lights became pinpricks, then disappeared entirely. They flew without navigation lights, invisible in the darkness. Ghosts riding the wind. The flight took 40 minutes. No one spoke. The roar of the engines made conversation impossible, but that wasn't why they were silent. Each of them was preparing. Finding that quiet place inside where fear lived and deciding what to do with it. Doc thought about his father. 23 years old, helicopter, door gunner, brass casings piling up at his feet, jungle canopy below like a green hell. Then the RPG, the explosion, the aircraft spinning, crashing. They found his body 3 days later. His mother never recovered, drank herself to death by the time Doc turned 18. Died alone in a VA hospital, clutching a photo of a man who'd been dead for 15 years. Doc joined the Army the day after her funeral, 32 years ago. And now here he was, in another helicopter, in another war, in another country that didn't want them. History doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. The Chinook banked hard, descent beginning. The loadmaster shouted over the engine noise, 2 minutes. Team Shadow stood, checked each other's gear, tug straps, verified weapons, the battle buddy system, making sure your partner was squared away because your life depended on it. 1 minute! The ramp dropped. Cold air rushed in. Below, darkness, mountains. Somewhere down there, enemies waited. Hawk grabbed the handlebar. Stay tight, stay quiet, stay alive. The helicopter flared, wheels touched dirt. Go, go, go! Team Shadow moved as one, down the ramp, into the darkness. The Chinook lifted before they'd gone 10 meters. Turbines screaming, then fading, then gone. Silence. 5 soldiers stood in the middle of nowhere. Doc keyed his radio. Single click, sound check. 4 clicks, answered. All accounted for. Hawk pointed. North. They moved. The mountains didn't care about their war. Team Shadow humped through the darkness. 8 kilometers of brutal terrain between them and their objective. They moved in tactical column. Ghost on point, reading the ground. Hawk behind him directing. Preacher and JJ in the middle. Doc bringing up rear security. They spoke in hand signals and radio clicks. The night was alive with sound. Wind through rocks. Distant village dogs. Once the bleating of goats somewhere above them. Every sound was a potential threat. Every shadow could hide an enemy. They stopped every 30 minutes to listen. On the second stop, Ghost raised a fist. Everyone froze. He pointed, ahead and left, 50 meters. Doc activated his night vision. The world turned green, and there, thermal signature bright against the cold rocks, 2 men, sitting, smoking, AK-47s slung across their backs. Sentries. Ghost looked back at Hawk, question in his eyes. She shook her head. Don't engage, go around. They detoured, added 20 minutes to the patrol, but stayed undetected. It took 6 hours to cover 8 kilometers. At 0430, they reached the Soviet bunker. It was exactly where intelligence said it would be, built into the mountainside, concrete walls 2 feet thick, gun ports facing the valley, abandoned since 1989. When the Soviets pulled out and left Afghanistan to tear itself apart, Ghost cleared the interior, came back out, single click, all clear. They filed in. The bunker smelled like dust and old death. Graffiti covered the walls, Cyrillic letters, Russian soldiers marking their presence. Some of it was poetry, some of it was rage, some of it was just names. Ivan, Dmitri, Sergei, boys who died far from home. Ghost ran his fingers over one inscription, translated quietly. We died for nothing. Go home. Dated 1908, 37 years ago. They didn't listen, Doc said. Neither did we. Hawk posted security. Set the watch rotation, 2 on, 3 resting. They'd maintain this position for as long as it took. Outside, the sun began to rise over the valley. And there, 3 kilometers away, Firebase Cobra sat on its hilltop, visible, vulnerable. 47 Americans eating breakfast, drinking coffee, making plans for another day. They had no idea that 5 ghosts were watching over them, or that an enemy with a long memory was watching too. Day 1 passed in observation. Through his spotting scope, Doc watched Firebase Cobra come to life. Morning formation, patrol briefings, soldiers moving through their routines with the casual confidence of people who thought they were safe. He counted faces, tried to memorize them. These were the people he was here to protect. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, platoon leader, 29 years old. West Point graduate, married, no kids yet. She led from the front, inspected defensive positions personally, knew all her soldiers by name. Specialist Tommy Rodriguez, not related to JJ but same last name, same pride. Machine gunner, built like a tank, smiled too much for a war zone. Private First Class Emma Wilson, combat medic, 21 years old, fresh out of training. She'd arrived at Firebase Cobra 2 weeks ago. Still had that new soldier eagerness. Corporal Marcus Davis, radio operator, silent type, always had a book in his pocket, reading during downtime. Doc watched them all. 47 souls. He'd do everything in his power to keep them breathing. On day 2, they spotted the observation network. Ghost found the first one, Natural hide site, 600 meters from Firebase Cobra. Perfect view of the main gate. One enemy spotter with binoculars and a radio. Preacher found the second, different angle, covering the patrol road. By day 3, they'd identified 9 observation posts. 9 sets of eyes watching the Americans. Hawk radioed Colonel Patterson. Shadow 1 to Overwatch. We have positive ID on enemy recon network. 9 confirmed OPs. Request permission to engage. Patterson's voice crackled back. Overwatch copies. You are cleared to dismantle. Keep it quiet. Don't spook the big fish. Shadow 1 copies. That night, they went hunting. Ghost moved like his call sign suggested. Invisible. Silent. Death in the darkness. He reached the first observation post at 0200. One enemy fighter asleep, another on watch. Ghost used his grandfather's tanto knife. 2 quick movements. Both men died without a sound. He didn't linger, didn't search bodies, didn't take trophies. He simply marked the position on GPS and moved to the next target. By dawn, 3 observation posts were empty. The enemy didn't notice until noon. Team Shadow listened to the radio intercepts. Panic, confusion, fear. JJ translated the Pashto. They're saying their spotters aren't reporting in. They think maybe the Americans found them. Good, Hawk said. Let them worry. Over the next 4 days, Team Shadow systematically destroyed the enemy's intelligence network. 9 observation posts eliminated, 9 spotters dead or missing. The enemy's eyes were going dark. And in Firebase Cobra, something changed. Patrols started coming back without contact. No ambushes, no IEDs. The attack stopped. Lieutenant Morrison radioed Colonel Patterson. Sir, it's like someone flipped a switch. The enemy's gone quiet. Copy that. Stay alert. Could be the calm before the storm. She didn't know about Team Shadow. Didn't know 5 soldiers were bleeding in the mountains above her. Didn't know Ghost had barely escaped an enemy patrol 2 nights ago. Didn't know Preacher was eating ibuprofen like candy because his shooting shoulder was screaming. Didn't know Doc was treating JJ for dehydration because she'd given her water to Ghost. Didn't know Hawk hadn't slept more than 2 hours in 4 days. All Morrison knew was that her soldiers weren't dying anymore. And that was enough. But on day 7, everything changed. It started with a radio intercept. JJ was monitoring enemy frequencies when she heard it. A voice, speaking Pashto, educated accent, calm, measured. She grabbed Ghost. I need you to translate this. Ghost listened. His expression shifted. Call Hawk. The team gathered around the radio. The voice spoke again. Ghost translated. The Americans in the old Russian bunker, 5 of them. They think they are hunters. But this valley has seen hunters before. The Soviets were hunters too. We buried them all. Doc felt ice in his veins. They'd been made. Hawk grabbed the handset. How long has he known? Ghost's voice was flat. He says they've known for 3 days. They've been watching us. Watch them. Why didn't they attack? The voice on the radio answered, as if he'd heard the question. Ghost translated. He says he's not trying to kill us. He's trying to teach us. He wants us to understand this valley doesn't belong to us. Then the voice said something else, something that made Doc's blood freeze. Ghost looked at him. Doc, he's talking about you. What? He says he knows about your father. Robert Henley Sr., 1st Cavalry Division. Killed in action April 17th, 1971. Ashau Valley. The world stopped. Doc grabbed the radio. How? How does he know that? Ghost listened to the response. His face went pale. He says he learned from the people who killed your father. The North Vietnamese Army. After the Soviets left, Vietnamese advisors stayed in Afghanistan, trained the Mujahideen. One of them was a colonel named Nguyen. Nguyen, Doc whispered. The voice says Colonel Nguyen told him about the American helicopter crews in the A Shao, about the brave door gunner who died covering his friend's escape, about the Henley family. The radio crackled again. Ghost translated. He says your father was an honorable man. He died with courage, and you carry his lighter. He can see it through his scope. Doc's hand went to his pocket. The Zippo. He'd been holding it during watch rotation. Someone had been watching him through a rifle scope, close enough to identify a lighter, close enough to kill him. But they hadn't. The voice spoke again. He says his name is Ahmad. The Americans trained him in 2003. The Soviets trained him before that. And the Vietnamese taught him how to defeat Americans. Ahmad paused, then delivered his message. Leave this valley. Firebase Cobra will fall. Your presence changes nothing. Or stay and learn what I taught the Soviets. This valley belongs to ghosts, and you are not ghosts. You are just soldiers. far from home, fighting for nothing. The transmission ended. Silence. Team Shadow looked at each other. They'd been hunted, studied, known. All their careful field craft, all their training, all their experience, none of it mattered against an enemy who'd fought longer than they'd been alive. Hawk keyed her radio. Shadow 1 to Overwatch. We have a situation. Colonel Patterson listened to their report, then was quiet for a long time. Finally, Shadow recommend immediate exfiltration and repositioning. He's in your heads. That's how he wins. Hawk looked at her team. Doc? Doc thought about his father. 23 years old, helicopter door gunner, covering his squad's retreat, dying so others could live. He pulled out the Zippo, clicked it open. Flame steady in the darkness. My father didn't run from the A-Shao. He closed the lighter. I won't run from here. Hawk looked at Preacher. You? Preacher touched his twin brother's dog tags. We don't abandon our posts. Ghost was already preparing his weapon. Vote cast through action. JJ nodded. 47 Americans down there need us. Hawk keyed the radio. Overwatch Shadow 1, we're staying. We finish this. Patterson's voice came back, heavy with something that might have been pride, might have been grief. Copy, Shadow. You are authorized to continue mission. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Find this Ahmad. End the threat. A pause. And Shadow? Go ahead, sir. Bring your people home. That's an order. Wilco, sir. The team relocated that night, 2 kilometers from the Soviet bunker. New position, new hide site. But they all knew the truth. Ahmad had let them leave. He could have killed them, could have called artillery, could have sent a squad. But he didn't, because this wasn't about killing them. It was about proving a point. That Afghanistan belonged to its ghosts and always would. Doc sat on watch, 0300, stars overhead, mountains black against the sky. He held his father's lighter, thought about wars that never ended, just moved, generation to generation, father to son, blood to blood. His radio crackled. All stations, this is Firebase Cobra. We have movement on all ridge lines, multiple contacts. They're coming. Hawk's voice, instant. Shadow copies, we're moving to support. The team grabbed weapons, checked gear, moved out into darkness. Behind them in the valley below, Firebase Cobra's sirens began to wail. The siege had begun, and somewhere in those mountains, Ahmad was teaching his final lesson. Doc clicked the Zippo one more time, whispered to his father's ghost. I won't let them die, not like you, not here. Then he moved into the darkness, following his team, toward the sound of guns, toward 47 Americans who didn't know 5 soldiers were racing through the night to save them. History doesn't repeat, but in these mountains, in this war, in this valley of shadows, it was about to rhyme one more time. And this time, Doc Henley would make sure it ended differently. The lighter clicked shut. The darkness swallowed everything. And Team Shadow disappeared into the war. The mortars came at dawn, not a barrage, not the devastating rain of steel that could level a position in minutes. Just one round. Whistling through the gray morning light. Impact in the center of Firebase Cobra's courtyard. Explosion, dust, smoke. No casualties. That was the message. I can hit you anytime I want. Through his spotting scope 3 kilometers away, Doc watched the American soldiers scramble for cover. Saw Lieutenant Morrison emerge from the command post, scanning the ridgelines, trying to identify the firing position. She wouldn't find it. Ahmad was too good for that. Team Shadow had covered 2 kilometers in 40 minutes, racing through the darkness, arriving at their overwatch position just as the sun broke over the mountains. Now they watched, waited, protected. Hawk keyed her radio. Shadow 1 to Cobra. We have eyes on your position. That mortar came from grid November Kilo 7742, single tube, displaced before we could engage. Morrison's voice crackled back. Tense, professional. Copy, Shadow 1. Can you interdict? Negative. He's gone mobile, but we're tracking. If he fires again, we'll have him. Understood. Cobra out. But Ahmad didn't fire again. Not for 6 hours. The second round came at 1400. Precisely aimed at the ammunition bunker on the south wall. Close enough to make everyone nervous. Far enough away to avoid detonation. The message was clear. I know where everything is. Doc studied Firebase Cobra through his scope. Counted faces again. 47 people. Some he recognized now. Specialist Rodriguez at the machine gun position. Private Wilson checking medical supplies. Corporal Davis on the radio. 47 souls who had no idea they were pieces on a chessboard. Ahmad was playing a different game, not trying to destroy them quickly, trying to break them slowly. Fear was a weapon, Uncertainty was ammunition. Make the enemy paranoid. Make them jump at shadows. Make them exhausted from constant vigilance. Then strike when they were weakest. Preacher lay beside Doc, eye pressed to his rifle scope. Scanning, searching. I had him, Preacher said quietly. This morning, when that first round came in, I saw the muzzle flash. I had my crosshairs on the position, but by the time I ranged it, he was gone. He's fast. He's something else. Preacher adjusted his scope. Doc, can I ask you something? Shoot. Your father, in Vietnam. Did he ever talk about being scared? Doc thought about that. He never came home to talk about anything. I only have his letters. What did they say? That he was terrified every single day, that the waiting was worse than the fighting, that he kept going because his brothers needed him. Doc looked at Preacher. Why? Preacher's hand went to his neck, to the 2 sets of dog tags hanging there, his own and his twin brothers. Marcus died because he missed a shot. One shot, the insurgent he missed fired back, killed him. Preacher's voice was barely a whisper. I've missed 3 shots this deployment. 3, I never miss in training. Never. But out here with real stakes, I'm in my own head. You thinking about your brother when you shoot? Every single time. That's your problem, Doc said. You're not shooting, he is. You're letting a ghost pull your trigger. Preacher was quiet for a long moment. How do I stop? You don't. You accept he's there. You honor his memory by doing the job right. Not perfect. Right. There's a difference. Before Preacher could respond, the radio crackled. Ghost voice, calm, quiet. I have movement. Grid November Kilo 7738. 2 individuals, setting up a tube. Hawk grabbed her handset. Can you engage? Negative, they're behind cover, but I can get closer. Ghost, don't go cowboy on me. I'll be fine. The radio clicked off. Doc watched through his scope as ghosts slipped out of their position. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. Invisible. Moving through terrain that should have provided no concealment. But Ghost had learned from his grandfather, the old man who'd fought with the 402nd, who'd earned a Medal of Honor storming a hill in Italy while his family sat in an internment camp in California. Honor wasn't about recognition. It was about doing what needed to be done, even when no one was watching. 30 minutes passed, then Ghost's voice, whisper quiet. In position, I have 2 personnel, mortar tube, approximately 20 rounds stacked. 3rd individual just arrived, appears to be forward observer with radio. Hawk made the call. Take them. 3 suppressed shots, spaced 4 seconds apart. Precision, professional. Targets down, displacing. But then Ghost's voice changed. Tension. Contact, I've been spotted. 4 hostiles moving to my position. Ghost, extract, will cover. Negative, too close, going dark. The radio went silent. Doc felt his chest tighten. Ghost was alone, cut off, 4 enemies hunting him. Hawk keyed the radio to Firebase Cobra. Cobra, Shadow 1. Be advised we have a man in contact. Grid November Kilo 7738. Hold your fires. Morrison's voice. Copy. What do you need? Prayers would be good. Time stretched. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Then Ghost's voice, calm as ever. Clear. 4 hostiles neutralized. Mortar position destroyed, returning to rally point. Doc let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. 40 minutes later, Ghost materialized beside them. Not a scratch on him. Blood on his grandfather's Tanto knife. You okay? Hawk asked. Ghost nodded. Didn't elaborate. He never did. That night, the 3rd mortar round fell. 2,200 hours. 2 rounds this time, bracketing the command post. 1 left, 1 right. Walking fire. Zeroing in. No casualties. But the message was received. Next time I won't miss. Inside Firebase Cobra, Lieutenant Morrison gathered her platoon. Doc listened to the radio traffic, heard the strain in her voice, the fear she was trying to hide. Listen up. The enemy is trying to get in our heads, trying to make us scared, trying to make us think we're already dead. Morrison paused. Well, screw that. We hold this position, we do our jobs, and we trust that help is coming. She didn't know help was already there. 3 kilometers away, 5 soldiers, bleeding in the rocks. Preacher hadn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands shook between shots. He'd field stripped his rifle 4 times, checking for problems that didn't exist. JJ was rationing water, gave half her share to Ghost. Thought no one noticed. Doc noticed everything. He made her drink. Hawk's voice was getting hoarse from radio calls. Coordinating with Firebase Cobra. with Colonel Patterson, with artillery, with air support that couldn't fly because of weather. Ghost sat in silence, cleaning blood off his knife. Ritual, meditation, prayer. And Doc, 58 years old, felt every year in his bones. His knees screamed, his back was on fire. His shoulder, where the rifle stock pressed, was one massive bruise. But he stayed. They all stayed, because 47 people needed them. Day 7 arrived with pre-dawn darkness and the sound of diesel engines. Doc was on watch when he heard it. Distant, multiple vehicles, moving through the valley below. He activated his night vision, scanned. There, 6 trucks, technical vehicles, heavy machine guns mounted in the beds, packed with fighters. He counted heads through thermal imaging, more than 60. Hawk, we have a problem. The team gathered, watched the convoy approach. It stopped 3 kilometers from Firebase Cobra, out of artillery range, out of direct fire range, just far enough to be safe. The fighters dismounted, organized into teams, professional, disciplined. Ahmad had brought an army. Hawk radioed Firebase Cobra. Cobra, Shadow 1, be advised. Estimated 60 plus hostiles assembling at grid November Kilo 7645. This is not a probe. This is a deliberate attack. Morrison's voice was steady. Copy. When? Dawn, maybe sooner. They're waiting for something. Waiting for what? For you to be tired, scared, ready to break. Shadow, can you interdict? Hawk looked at her team. 5 people, 60 plus enemies. We'll do what we can. The attack began at 0430. Not with mortars, not with machine guns, with silence. The first wave was 12 fighters, moving in the darkness, using the terrain. Approaching from the north where Firebase Cobra's defenses were weakest. Ghost spotted them first, thermal signatures, creeping forward. Contact, north side, 12 individuals, 200 meters from the wire. Preacher shifted his rifle, found the lead fighter in his scope, range, wind, elevation. All the calculations running automatically. Muscle memory. He squeezed the trigger. Miss! The bullet kicked up dirt 3 feet to the left. Damn it, Preacher hissed. Send another, Hawk ordered. Preacher fired again. Hit this time, the fighter dropped. But the others scattered, found cover, returned fire. Inside Firebase Cobra, alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled to positions. Machine guns opened up. Tracers arcing through the darkness. Red and green streaks painting the night. The second wave came from the east. Another 12 fighters. Coordinated, timed to split the defenders' attention. JJ was calling fire missions. Artillery from Firebase Sentinel, 15 kilometers away. She gave corrections. Watched the impacts through binoculars. Left 50, add 100. The next salvo walked closer, explosions rippling through the enemy positions. Bodies flying, debris raining down. But they kept coming. Wave 3, Wave 4, each probing a different sector, each learning where the defenses were strong, where they were weak. Ahmad was conducting reconnaissance by fire, spending lives to gather information. Team Shadow engaged continuously, all 5 rifles working, Hawk directing fire, Doc taking shots between treating minor wounds, Preacher struggling with every trigger pull, Ghost calm and methodical, JJ splitting time between radio and rifle. They'd been fighting for 3 hours when the sun came up, and Doc saw the scope of what they faced. More than 60 fighters, positioned in a horseshoe around Firebase Cobra, dug in, covered, using terrain perfectly. Heavy weapons, RPG at least 3 machine gun positions. This wasn't a raid. This was a siege. Hawk radioed Patterson. Overwatch Shadow 1, we are in sustained contact. Enemy has Firebase Cobra surrounded. Request immediate reinforcement. Patterson's voice was grim. Shadow Overwatch. QRF is wheels up in 20 minutes. ETA to your position, 3 hours. Can you hold? 3 hours. Hawk looked at her team, exhausted, running low on ammunition, already bleeding from minor wounds and shrapnel. We'll hold. Air support? Negative. Weather is below minimums. Birds are grounded. Copy. We're on our own. Patterson paused, then, Shadow, I'm proud of you, all of you. Bring them home. Wilco, sir. The fighting intensified as the sun climbed higher. The enemy wasn't trying to overrun Firebase Cobra, not yet. They were wearing down the defenders, forcing them to expend ammunition, forcing them to stay alert, forcing mistakes. And it was working. Doc saw it through his scope. Soldiers inside Firebase Cobra moving slower, taking longer to respond to threats, making mistakes. One private exposed himself too long, Took a round through the leg. Medics dragged him to cover. Private Wilson, the new medic. Doc watched her work, applying tourniquet, starting an IV. Good technique. Trained well. She'd save that soldier. But how many more could she save before her supplies ran out? Preacher fired. Missed again. Fired, hit. Fired, missed. His pattern was getting worse. The fatigue, the stress, the ghost of his twin brother sitting on his shoulder, whispering doubts. Preacher, take a break, Hawk ordered. I'm fine. That's an order, Staff Sergeant. Preacher pulled back from his rifle, sat with his back against a rock, head in his hands. Doc watched him mouth words, prayer, asking God for strength, for forgiveness, for another chance to make the shot that mattered. JJ was on the radio, calling another fire mission. Her voice was getting hoarse. She'd been talking for 6 hours straight. Then she stood up, just for a moment, adjusting the radio antenna, trying to get a better signal to Firebase Sentinel. Doc saw the muzzle flash, saw JJ's body jerk, saw her fall. JJ! He was moving before his brain processed what happened. Crossed 5 meters in seconds. Slid beside her. Blood, so much blood. The bullet had entered high on her right chest, above the body armor, through the soft tissue, into the lung. Sucking chest wound. One of the worst injuries on a battlefield. JJ was drowning in her own blood. Doc's training took over, ripped open his medical kit. Occlusive dressing, sealed the wound, but air was still escaping. Tension pneumothorax. The lung was collapsing, pressure building in her chest cavity. Would stop her heart in minutes. He needed to decompress it. Needed a needle. His hands moved automatically. Found the second intercostal space. Mid-clavicular line. Landmark. Insert. Release. Air hissed out. JJ gasped, choked, coughed blood. Stay with me, kid. Stay with me. Her eyes found his. Terrified. 24 years old, bleeding out in the mountains, so far from home. She tried to speak. Blood bubbled from her lips. Don't talk. Save your strength. But she pushed the words out anyway. Sorry, Doc, I messed up. You did your job. Now fight. Your daddy didn't raise a quitter. Ghost appeared beside him, rifle slung, ready to help. We need to get her to Firebase Cobra, Doc said. Now, she needs a surgeon. Hawk crawled over, assessed, made the hard decision. Ghost, Doc. Take her. Get her stabilized. That leaves you and Preacher alone. We'll hold. Go. Doc looked at the remaining ammunition. The two of them couldn't hold this position for 3 hours. But JJ would die in 20 minutes without surgery. Go, Hawk ordered. Doc and Ghost lifted JJ. She screamed, pain beyond anything she'd ever felt. They carried her in a fireman's carry, alternating, running when they could, crawling when they couldn't. 600 meters of hell. Enemy fire followed them, bullets snapping past, RPG impacting 20 meters to their left, shrapnel whining through the air. Ghost took a fragment to the shoulder, didn't slow down. Doc felt something hot graze his ribs, didn't look, kept moving. JJ was fading. Blood loss, shock. Her lips were turning blue. Stay with me, kid. We're almost there. The Firebase Cobra gate was ahead. 50 meters, 30, 20. Soldiers were laying down covering fire, suppressing the enemy positions. They crossed the wire. Hands grabbed them, pulled them inside. Lieutenant Morrison was there. Get her to the aid station. Move. They carried JJ to a sandbag bunker. Medical supplies stacked on pallets. Private Wilson waiting, eyes wide. First real trauma case. I need you to save her life, Doc said. Can you do that? Wilson looked at the wound, the blood, the gasping breaths. Then she squared her shoulders. Yes, Master Sergeant, I can. Then do it. Doc stepped back. Let the young medic work. Watched her hands move with practiced efficiency. IV lines, blood products, chest tube. She was good, well-trained. JJ would live, if they could get her out in time. Ghost touched Doc's arm, pointed at his side. Doc looked down, blood soaking through his uniform. The graze had been deeper than he thought. Not life-threatening, but it needed attention. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Later, he keyed his radio. Shadow 1 Doc, JJ is stable. Needs immediate medevac. Hawk's voice came back, strained, firing her rifle between words. Copy, I'll request. But weather is still shit. Birds can't fly. How long? Unknown. Could be 12 hours. Doc looked at JJ, pale, unconscious, clinging to life. 12 hours. She might not have 12 hours. Morrison approached. Master Sergeant, thank you for getting her here. Just doing my job, ma'am. Your team out there. 2 people. They're holding off 60 attackers. They're good at their jobs, too. How long can they last? Doc checked his watch. QRF was still 2 hours out. Long enough, he hoped. But then Morrison's radio crackled. Different frequency, encrypted channel. Cobra, this is Warhorse 6. We have eyes on hostile activity, your position. Stand by for immediate danger, close support. Morrison grabbed the handset. Warhorse, what are you seeing? Cobra, we have visual on individual moving toward your position from grid November, Kilo 7650. Single person, appears to be juvenile. Estimate age 14 to 16 years old. Doc felt ice in his veins. Morrison looked at him. Shadow team, do you have visual? Doc moved to the wall, grabbed binoculars, scanned the grid coordinates. There, 400 meters out, moving toward Firebase Cobra. A boy, maybe 15 years old, wearing a vest, bulky, too heavy for the heat. Suicide bomber. Doc's breath stopped. Through the binoculars, he could see the boy's face. Tears streaming, mouth moving, praying or crying or both. His hands weren't free. They were bound in front of him, barely visible under the vest. This wasn't a volunteer. This was a victim. Morrison was on the radio. All positions, we have hostile approaching north wire. Suicide vest, 400 meters in closing. Prepare to engage. Wait, Doc said. Master Sergeant, that vest could be 50 pounds of explosive. If he reaches the wire, he'll kill everyone in a 100-meter radius. He's a kid. Look at his hands. He's tied. He's being forced. Morrison grabbed the binoculars, looked, saw what Doc saw. Her face went pale. Warhorse Cobra, can you identify who's controlling the individual? Negative, Cobra. No visual on handlers, but recommend immediate engagement. Vest is live. The boy was 350 meters away now, walking slow, every step in agony, every meter closer to the Americans who would kill him, or to the trigger man who would detonate him remotely. Doc scanned the ridgeline behind the boy. Thermal optics, looking for the handler. There, 600 meters back, single heat signature, prone position, with a radio, watching, waiting. If the Americans shot the boy, they'd prove they were monsters who killed children. If they didn't shoot, the boy would reach the wire and detonate. Kill dozens. Ahmad's most vicious trap yet. I need a rifle, Doc said. Morrison looked at him. Master Sergeant, that boy doesn't want to die. Someone's making him. I'm going to give him a choice. The vest will detonate if you shoot him. I'm not shooting him. Doc grabbed an M110 from a weapon rack. Checked the zero. Not his rifle, not his optics, but it would have to do. He moved to the north wall, set up a firing position, ranged the target. Not the boy. The handler. 600 meters, prone, partially concealed behind rocks. Difficult shot, but possible. Doc's hands were steady. 58 years old, 32 years in uniform. He'd made harder shots, but never with stakes like this. The boy was 300 meters away now, close enough that Doc could see his face clearly. 15 years old, maybe younger, should be in school, playing soccer, living. Instead, he was walking toward death, forced to choose between detonating and killing Americans or refusing and being detonated himself. Doc put his crosshairs on the handler, breathed. This was the shot that mattered. Not for a mission, not for a medal, for a child who deserved a chance to live. Morrison, when I fire, you send someone to get that boy. Cut his vest, bring him inside, understand? Master Sergeant, if you miss, that handler detonates the vest. I won't miss. Morrison looked at him, saw something in his eyes. Belief, certainty, the quiet confidence of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Copy, on your shot, we extract. Doc settled his breathing, felt his heartbeat slow. The world narrowed to the space between him and the target. 600 meters. Wind 3 miles per hour left to right. Temperature 94 degrees. Downhill angle minimal. The handler shifted, finger on the radio trigger, watching the boy approach the wire. Doc's finger touched his trigger. He thought about his father, about helicopter door gunners who gave everything to save their brothers. He thought about the promise he'd made, to bring his people home alive. And he thought about the 15-year-old boy who never asked to be part of this war. Doc squeezed. The rifle fired. The bullet covered 600 meters in under 2 seconds. Through his scope, Doc watched the impact. Center mass. The handler jerked, fell backward. The radio tumbled from his hand. The boy stopped walking, confused, waiting for the detonation that didn't come. Go, Morrison shouted. 3 soldiers sprinted from the gate, sprinted toward the boy. Reached him in 20 seconds. 1 cut the vest, 2 grabbed the boy. They dragged him back toward the wire. Enemy fighters were firing now, realizing their trap had failed, bullets kicking up dirt around the rescue team. Doc shifted his rifle, engaged the enemy positions, suppressing fire, buying seconds. The rescue team made it through the gate. The boy collapsed inside the wire, sobbing, alive. The vest sat in the dirt, 400 meters out, 60 pounds of explosives that would never detonate. Doc lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up. Morrison was beside him. That was impossible. 600 meters. Moving target behind cover. One shot. Had to be done. You saved that kid's life. Just doing my job, ma'am. But his voice cracked. Because it wasn't just a job. It was the difference between the soldier he was and the killer Ahmad wanted him to become. Ghost appeared. Materialized out of nowhere like his call sign suggested. Doc, Hawk says Preacher needs you. Something's wrong. Doc looked back at JJ. Still unconscious. Wilson was maintaining her. Stable for now. He looked at the boy, sitting against a wall, hands free, vest gone, crying but alive. Then he looked at Ghost. Let's go. They moved back toward their position. 3 kilometers, but faster this time. No cargo, just 2 soldiers who knew their brothers needed them. Behind them, Firebase Cobra held. Because sometimes the hardest shot isn't the one that kills. It's the one that saves. 3 kilometers away, Hawk and Preacher held the line. 2 rifles against an army. Hawk was down to 40 rounds. Preacher had 60. They'd been firing for 8 hours. Their barrels were hot enough to burn skin. Their shoulders were bruised purple from recoil. But they kept shooting. Enemy fighter exposed to place an RPG. Preacher fired. Hit. The fighter fell. The RPG clattered away. Another fighter trying to flank. Hawk engaged. Dropped him with 2 shots. They were buying time with bullets. But bullets run out. Preacher's hands were shaking. His vision was blurring from exhaustion. Every shot took longer to line up. Every calculation was harder. He thought about his brother, Marcus, the good twin, the faithful one, the one who'd gone to seminary before the war called them both. Marcus, who died because he'd missed 1 shot. 1 shot, and now Preacher was missing too many. I can't do this, he said. Didn't mean to say it out loud, but exhaustion made filters fail. Hawk looked at him. What? I can't make the shots. I'm in my head. I'm seeing Marcus. I'm scared. We're all scared. But you're not missing. Hawk grabbed his shoulder, forced him to look at her. Listen to me. Your brother died doing his duty. He died protecting people who needed him. That's honor. That's courage. And you're doing the same thing right now. But I'm missing. You're still shooting. That's what matters. You're still in the fight. Preacher touched the dog tags around his neck. Both sets, his and Marcus's. What would he tell me right now? He'd tell you to stop thinking and start trusting. Trust your training, trust your hands, trust that you're right where you're supposed to be. Preacher closed his eyes, breathed, felt the metal tags against his chest, warm from his body heat, opened his eyes. Okay, I'm ready. And that's when the radio crackled. Ghost's voice, from Firebase Cobra. Hawk, I have thermal imaging. Target signature consistent with HVT at grid November Kilo 7740, range 920 meters, elevated position, multiple personnel around him. Hawk grabbed her binoculars, scanned the coordinates. There, on a ridge, behind the enemy lines, a group of fighters, and 1 man standing taller than the others, pointing, directing, commanding. Ahmad, after 7 days, after 60-plus Americans killed or wounded, after JJ nearly dying. Finally, the architect of all this pain was visible. Preacher, Hawk said, this is your shot. Preacher moved to his rifle, settled behind the scope, found the target. 920 meters, downhill angle, wind gusting between 5 and 8 miles per hour. Target partially obscured by other fighters. It was an impossible shot, the kind of shot that ended careers when you missed, the kind of shot that got people killed. Preacher's hands started to shake. He thought about Marcus, about that day in Fallujah, about watching his twin brother die through a rifle scope, about all the shots he'd missed this deployment, about JJ bleeding out in Firebase Cobra, about the boy Doc had saved, given a chance to live, about 47 Americans depending on him. His finger touched the trigger, and then he heard it. Not with his ears, with something deeper. His brother's voice, clear as the mountain air. Stop thinking, Marcus, just shoot. Preacher exhaled slowly, calculated the hold. Wind, distance, angle, temperature, all of it running through his brain like water. He whispered a prayer, "Forgive me, God. Forgive me, brother. But this has to end." Ahmed turned, gesturing to his fighters, exposed for maybe 3 seconds. Preacher squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired. Time slowed. The bullet left the barrel at 2,700 feet per second, spinning, dropping, drifting right in the wind. 920 meters to cover. 3.2 seconds of flight time. Ahmad started to move. The bullet arrived. Through Hawk's binoculars, she saw the impact. High chest, left side. Ahmad spun, staggered, went down. Fighters rushed to him, dragged him behind cover. "Hit!" Hawk breathed. "You hit him!" Preacher was staring through his scope, not moving, not breathing. "I aimed center mass," he said quietly. "I was off by 6 inches. But you hit him." "I missed where I aimed." "You hit the target, Preacher. You took down their commander. That's all that matters." On the enemy's side, chaos erupted. Fighters without direction, without orders. Some kept firing, some retreated, some froze. The coordinated attack fell apart. Inside Firebase Cobra, Lieutenant Morrison saw the change immediately. "They're breaking contact. All positions, maintain fires. Don't let them regroup." The American machine guns roared. Artillery from Firebase Sentinel walked through the retreating fighters. Close air support, finally cleared to fly as the weather broke, arrived with Hellfire missiles and 30mm cannons. The siege was over. Ahmad's army scattered, fled, dissolved back into the mountains, leaving their dead behind. 54 enemy killed, unknown wounded. American casualties: 7 killed in action at Firebase Cobra, 18 wounded, including J.J. Rodriguez, critical. Team Shadow: 1 critical wounded, minor wounds to Doc and Ghost, Hawk and Preacher unhurt. Mission status: primary objective incomplete. Ahmed wounded but alive, evacuated by his fighters. The QRF arrived 90 minutes later, fresh troops, fresh ammunition, fresh hope. And with them, medevac helicopters. Doc sat with Jay as they loaded her onto the Black Hawk. She was unconscious, intubated, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that kept her alive. Private Wilson had done good work, stabilized her, given her a chance. Now it was up to the surgeons at Bagram. The crew chief looked at Doc. "You riding with her, Master Sergeant?" Doc looked back at the mountains, at Hawk and Preacher and Ghost, at the mission that wasn't finished, at Ahmed somewhere out there, wounded but alive. Then he looked at JJ, 24 years old, someone's daughter, Gunny Rodriguez's little girl. "Yeah, I'm riding with her." He climbed into the helicopter. The crew chief keyed his intercom. "We're loaded, let's go." The Black Hawk lifted off, banked hard, gained altitude. Through the window, Doc watched Firebase Cobra fall away, watched his team become small figures, then dots, then nothing. He put his hand on JJ's, squeezed gently. "You did good, kid. Your daddy's gonna be proud." She didn't respond, couldn't hear him, but Doc believed she felt it. The connection, the brotherhood, the promise that soldiers make to each other, that no one gets left behind, that we all go home, or none of us do. The helicopter flew south, toward Bagram, toward doctors, toward life. Behind them in the mountains, 3 soldiers remained: Hawk, Preacher, Ghost. And somewhere in those same mountains, Ahmed was being treated for a gunshot wound. Wounded but not killed. Dangerous but not defeated. The mission wasn't over. It was just beginning. Colonel Patterson's voice crackled over the radio. "Shadow 1, Overwatch, sit rep." Hawk keyed her handset. "Overwatch, Shadow 1. Firebase Cobra is secure. Enemy has withdrawn. JJ is medevaced with Doc. Preacher, Ghost, and I remain in position." Copy. Intelligence reports Ahmed was evacuated to a compound 15 kilometers north, near the Pakistan border. He's wounded but alive. "What are your orders, sir?" Patterson was quiet for a long moment. "Then, Shadow, you've been in continuous combat for 7 days. You're exhausted. You're down 2 team members. I'm ordering you to extract and return to base." Hawk looked at Preacher, at Ghost. 2 soldiers, faces streaked with dirt and powder burns, eyes red from fatigue, but still standing, still ready. "Sir, with respect, we started this mission. We'd like to finish it." "Captain Castellano, I can't order you to do this." "You're not ordering us, sir. We're volunteering." Another pause. The compound is heavily defended, 20 to 30 fighters. Ahmad is wounded, but he's still in command. This would be a direct action mission, high risk. "Understood. If you're captured, Pakistan is 5 kilometers away. They can cross the border. We can't follow. We won't get captured." Famous last words. "Sir, this man has killed 60+ Americans. wounded twice that many. He's terrorized an entire province, and he's still out there. Hawk's voice was steel. We're 3 soldiers, but we're the 3 who know him best. We've been inside his head for a week. We know how he thinks. And you think you can take him? I think we owe it to JJ to try, to all the soldiers who died in his ambushes, to finish what we started. Patterson sighed. I can't officially authorize this mission, but I can tell you that a Predator drone is currently loitering over grid November Kilo 7855. It has full weapon load. The pilot is awaiting tasking. Hawk understood. Plausible deniability. If they went, it was their choice, not orders. Thank you, sir. Hawk, bring your people home. Wilco. She turned to Preacher and Ghost. You heard him. This is voluntary. No shame in saying no. Preacher touched his brother's dog tags. I'm in. Ghost simply picked up his rifle. Vote cast through action. Hawk nodded. Then we finish this. For JJ, for Corporal Davis and all the others. For every American who died in this valley. She checked her weapon. 40 rounds left. It would have to be enough. The 3 of them moved out, heading north, into the mountains, toward the compound where Ahmed waited. Behind them, Firebase Cobra celebrated. Soldiers who'd survived 7 days of hell, hugging each other, crying, laughing, alive. They didn't know 3 ghosts were walking into the dark. 3 soldiers against an army, going to finish the war, or die trying. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in blood and fire, and in the valley below the shadows grew long. The compound sat against the mountain like a scar on the landscape. Through night vision optics, Hawk studied the target. Stone walls, guard towers, heavy wooden gate, 20 meters by 30 meters. Small, defensible, built centuries ago, used by warlords, then Taliban, then whoever had the guns and the will to hold it. Now it belonged to Ahmed, or what was left of him. 15 kilometers. That's how far Team Shadow had traveled in 8 hours. Hawk, Preacher, Ghost, 3 soldiers, moving through darkness, avoiding patrols, avoiding villages, avoiding everything that breathed. They'd established Overwatch position at 0200, 1 kilometer from the compound. High ground, good fields of fire, but not good enough. The compound was built into the mountainside, only one approach, through a narrow valley. Perfect kill zone. Anyone trying to assault it would be cut to pieces before they reached the gate. Ahmad had chosen well. I count 8 sentries, Ghost whispered, his voice barely audible even at 2 feet. 4 on the walls, 2 at the gate, 2 rovers. Interior, Hawk asked. Unknown, but thermal shows at least 20 heat signatures inside the main building. 20 fighters plus Ahmad. 3 soldiers, low on ammunition, exhausted. The math didn't work. Preacher adjusted his scope, scanned the compound. His hands were steadier now. After the shot that wounded Ahmad, something had shifted inside him. Not confidence, something quieter. Acceptance. We can call in the Predator, he said, Hellfire missile. Level the whole compound. Collateral damage assessment? Hawk asked. Ghost checked his tablet, linked to the drone feed overhead. Compound is isolated. Nearest civilian structure is 3 kilometers. Acceptable. Hawk thought about it. 1 button push. 1 missile. Ahmed dead. Mission complete. Clean. Simple. Safe. But her father had been a cop in Los Angeles. Taught her that justice and revenge were different things. Justice was about ending threats. Revenge was about feeling better. She keyed her tidy, encrypted channel to Firebase Sentinel. Overwatch, Shadow 1, request sitrep on Corporal Rodriguez. Colonel Patterson's voice came back. Tired. He hadn't slept either. Rodriguez is out of surgery, stable. Doctors say she'll live. Full recovery expected. Hawk felt something loosen in her chest. JJ would live. That's what mattered. And Master Sergeant Henley? He stayed at Bagram. Wouldn't leave her side until she woke up. But Shadow, you should know. He commandeered a helicopter. He's inbound to your position with 1 Ranger squad for support. ETA 30 minutes. Hawk blinked. Say again. Doc is coming back. With backup. They'll link up with you and provide support for compound assault. Preacher lowered his rifle, looked at Hawk, smiled. The old man was coming back. Because that's what sergeants did. They took care of their soldiers. All of them. Even when it meant walking back into hell. Copy. Overwatch. We'll hold position and wait for reinforcement. Negative, Shadow, you have a narrow window. Intelligence indicates Ahmad is preparing to evacuate across the Pakistan border. 0600. 3 hours from now. If he crosses, we can't touch him. Hawk checked her watch. 0300 now. 3 hours. Wait for Doc and the Rangers. They'd arrive at 0330. 30 minutes to plan and execute. Possible. Tight. Or move now. 3 of them. Long odds. But surprise on their side. Preacher, Ghost, vote. We wait for Doc or we go now. Preacher touched his brother's dog tags. If we wait, Ahmad might slip away. Marcus died because we hesitated. I won't make that mistake twice. Ghost was already checking his weapons. Tanto knife, suppressed pistol, rifle. I can get inside, open the gate from interior. You two provide overwatch and covering fire. Hawk knew that voice, the calm, the certainty. Ghost had made up his mind. She looked at the compound, at the narrow valley, at the math that said 3 soldiers couldn't take 20 fighters. Then she thought about Corporal Davis, dead at Firebase Cobra, about the 60-plus Americans killed in Ahmad's ambushes, about JJ nearly bleeding out in her arms, about finishing what they started. We go. Ghost, you infiltrate. Preacher and I provide precision fire, rules of engagement. Anyone with a weapon is hostile. Anyone surrendering gets taken alive. She looked at both of them, including Ahmad. We take him alive if possible. Why? Preacher asked. Because dead men can't answer questions, can't provide intelligence, can't pay for their crimes in a courtroom. Ghost nodded, understood. Preacher hesitated, then agreed. They synchronized watches, checked equipment one final time. Ghost stripped off his body armor. Too noisy, too bulky, kept only his rifle, pistol, knife, and night vision. He looked at Hawk. 30 minutes. If I'm not at the gate in 30 minutes, call in the Predator. Ghost. 30 minutes, Captain. Don't wait longer. Don't risk the mission for me. Before she could respond, he was gone. One moment there. Next moment invisible. Swallowed by darkness. Hawk and Preacher settled into firing positions, weapons ready, watching, waiting, trusting their brother to do the impossible. Ghost moved like water. His grandfather had taught him. Old man with numbers tattooed on his arm from Manzanar internment camp, who'd volunteered for the 42nd because being American wasn't about where you were born. It was about what you were willing to die for. The old man had earned his Medal of Honor taking a machine gun nest in Italy, crawled 200 meters through open ground. Every man in his squad said it was impossible. The old man did it anyway. Ghost thought about him now, moving through the narrow valley, staying low, using every rock, every shadow, every sound of the night to mask his approach. 200 meters from the compound. 150. A sentry on the wall. Smoking. AK-47 slung over his shoulder, looking the wrong direction. Ghost waited. Patient. Breathing slow. The sentry finished his cigarette, flicked it over the wall, walked away. Ghost moved. He reached the wall. Stone. Ancient. Gaps between rocks where mortar had crumbled. Handholds. Footholds. He climbed. No ropes. No equipment. Just fingers and toes. Finding purchase. Trusting his weight to stones that had held for centuries. At the top he paused, listened. Voices inside. Pashto. Talking about the American sniper who'd shot their commander. Angry. Scared. Good. Fear made people sloppy. Ghost rolled over the wall, dropped into shadow, 12 feet down, landed silent. He was inside. The compound courtyard was 30 meters across. Hard-packed dirt. A well in the center. Buildings on 3 sides. The main structure straight ahead. 2 stories, where Ahmad would be. 4 fighters visible. 2 near the gate, 2 by the well. All armed, all alert. Ghost couldn't kill all 4 silently. Not fast enough. He needed a distraction. He pulled a flashbang from his vest. Last one, saved for emergency. This qualified. He waited for the 2 fighters near the well to move closer together. 10 seconds, 20. There, Ghost threw the flashbang. High arc, it landed between them. The explosion was blinding, deafening in the enclosed space. Both fighters went down, stunned, disoriented. The 2 at the gate spun, weapons up, looking for targets. Ghost shot them both. Suppressed pistol. 2 shots. Double tap. They fell. He sprinted to the gate, heavy wooden beam across it. He lifted, threw it aside, pulled the gate open. Into his radio. Gate open, approach when ready. Hawk's voice. Copy, moving. Behind him, fighters were pouring out of the buildings, shouting, firing blindly. Ghost took cover behind the well, returned fire, precise, controlled, dropping targets. But there were too many. A bullet sparked off stone near his head. Another tugged at his sleeve. They were zeroing in. Then Preacher's rifle spoke from the ridgeline, 1 kilometer away. In darkness, through chaos, a fighter dropped, headshot. Another, chest shot. Hawk was firing too, suppressing, forcing the enemy to take cover. Ghost used the distraction, moved to the main building, kicked in the door. Interior, smoke, darkness, confusion. He activated his night vision. The world turned green. Stairs, leading up. He climbed, rifle ready, each step careful, expecting ambush. Second floor, hallway, 3 doors. Behind the middle door, voices. One speaking, others responding. Command tone. Ahmad. Ghost stacked on the door, listened. 5 people inside, maybe 6. Bad odds for a room entry. But his grandfather had taught him. Sometimes the only way out is through. Ghost kicked the door. Inside, Ahmad sat propped against cushions, left shoulder bandaged, blood seeping through, pale, weak, but his eyes were sharp, alert. 4 fighters around him, weapons rising. Ghost shot the first one before his AK cleared leather. The second one got a round off, missed. Ghost return fire didn't. Third fighter tackled him. Both went down. Wrestling, Ghost dropped his rifle, grabbed his grandfather's tanto knife. Single upward thrust. The fighter gasped, died. Fourth fighter was bringing his weapon around. Time slowed. Ghost couldn't reach his gun. The fighter's finger touched the trigger. Then Ahmad shouted, single word in Pashto. Stop. The fighter froze. Ahmad spoke again, longer sentence. The fighter lowered his weapon, backed away, hands raised. Ghost got to his feet, blood on his knife, blood on his uniform, none of it his. He pointed his rifle at Ahmad. Tell him to leave. Ahmad spoke in Pashto. The fighter left. Running, footsteps echoing down the stairs. Ghost and Ahmad were alone. You are the quiet one, Ahmad said in English, accented but clear. I wondered which of you would come. You're under arrest. Ahmad laughed, winced, pain from his wound. Arrest, such an American concept, as if this is a crime and not a war. You killed 60 Americans. And you killed how many of my countrymen? Do we count only the dead that matter to you? Ghost didn't answer. His rifle didn't waver. Ahmad studied him. Japanese, your grandfather fought in World War II. The 402nd Regimental Combat Team. I read about them. Most decorated unit in American history. And they volunteered from prison camps. How do you know that? Because I read. I learn. I study my enemies. Ahmad shifted, grimaced. Your people were imprisoned because of their faces, treated as enemies though they were citizens. Yet they fought anyway. Honor. Yes, honor. Ahmad nodded. That is what your people and mine share. We understand honor. We understand duty. The Americans who run your wars understand only power. Ghost keyed his radio. Hawk, I have Ahmad, 2nd floor, center building. Hawk's voice. Copy, we're coming in. How many hostiles? Unknown. Compound is chaos, but Ahmad is secure. Hold position, we're 30 seconds out. Ghost heard gunfire outside. Getting closer. Hawk and Preacher fighting their way in. Then new sounds, helicopter rotors, heavy, multiple birds. The Rangers and Doc. Help was arriving, but Ghost didn't lower his rifle. Something in Ahmad's eyes, not fear, not resignation, something else. Sadness, maybe, or understanding. You will kill me now? Ahmad asked. Not unless you make me. I made my peace with death long ago, when your drone killed my family. Ahmad's voice was soft, distant. My wife, Layla, my daughters, Amina was 7, Fatima was 4, my mother, 73 years old, all of them, erased, because your intelligence said a terrorist was in that house. Ghost felt something twist in his gut. The terrorist was not there. It was a wedding, my cousin's wedding. But your operator saw military-age males, saw cell phones, saw enough to authorize the strike. Ahmad looked at him. Do you know what it feels like to bury your children? To wash their bodies and to wrap them, to put them in the ground, knowing they died for nothing. I'm sorry for your loss. Are you, or do you just say that because you have been taught to? Both. Ahmad nodded. At least you are honest. That is rare in soldiers. The door burst open. Hawk entered, rifle up. Then Preacher, covering angles. They saw Ghost, saw Ahmad, saw the bodies. Status? Hawk demanded. Secure. Ahmad is wounded, compliant. Hawk approached, looked at the man who'd killed so many of her countrymen, who'd orchestrated ambushes, who'd terrorized an entire province. He looked small, old, tired. Preacher kept his rifle trained, but his finger was off the trigger. He'd heard Ahmad's story through ghost radio about the family, about the drone strike. It didn't excuse what Ahmad had done, but it explained it. Hawk Keeter radio. Shadow 1 to Overwatch. We have Ahmad in custody. Compound is not secure. Request immediate reinforcement. Patterson's voice. Rangers are on the ground. Doc is with them. They're sweeping the compound now. ETA to your position 2 minutes. Copy. Ahmad closed his eyes. So it ends. I will be taken to your prison. Bagram, or worse, Guantanamo. I will be interrogated, tortured, then forgotten. You'll face trial, Hawk said. Will I, or will I simply disappear, like so many others? Footsteps on the stairs. Multiple soldiers, moving fast. Heavy boots. Professional movement. The Rangers had arrived. Then Doc appeared in the doorway, still in bloody uniform from treating JJ, eyes red from exhaustion, but moving like a man with purpose. He saw Ahmed, stopped. Something passed between them. Recognition, not of faces, but of something deeper. 2 old soldiers, both tired, both carrying ghosts. Doc stepped forward, looked at Ahmad's wound. Professional assessment. You need treatment. That wound is infected. Let it be. I am finished. Nobody's finished until I say so. Doc opened his medical kit. Hawk, give me space. I'm treating him. Doc, he's the enemy. He's a patient. That's all that matters right now. Doc knelt beside Ahmad, cut away the bloody bandage. The wound was ugly. Preacher's bullet had done damage. Shattered collarbone, tissue damage, but missed the major vessels. Ahmad would live. Doc cleaned the wound, applied fresh dressing, gave him water. Why? Ahmad asked. Why help me? Because I'm a medic. That's what medics do. Even for your enemies? Especially for our enemies. That's the difference between us and you. Ahmad drank the water, studied Doc. You are the old one, the one whose father died in Vietnam. Doc's hands stopped moving. How do you know about my father? Colonel Nguyen told me, the MVA officer who trained me. He told me stories about the American helicopter crews, about the door gunners who gave their lives to save their brothers. Ahmad paused. He spoke of one in particular, a young man named Henley, who covered his squad's retreat, who died so 12 others could live. Doc's voice was barely a whisper. You knew Colonel Nguyen? I was his student. After the Soviets left Afghanistan, Vietnamese advisors stayed. They taught us how to fight Americans, how to think like Americans, how to exploit American weaknesses. Ahmad coughed, winced. Nguyen was the best teacher I ever had. He understood war not as conquest, but as suffering. He said the Americans would never win because they did not understand what they were asking us to sacrifice. Where is Nguyen now? Dead, 20 years ago, diabetes. He died in a small village, forgotten by everyone except those he taught. Doc sat back, his father's Zippo in his hand, clicking it open and closed, open and closed. Nguyen fought my father's unit, 1st Cavalry, Ashau Valley, April 1971. I know. He told me. He said the Americans were brave, foolish, but brave. They fought for each other, not for the government, not for the mission, for the man beside them. Ahmad looked at Doc, just as you do now. Outside, the Rangers were clearing rooms, zip-tying prisoners, securing the compound. Doc could hear Sergeant Collins barking orders. Professional, efficient. The fight was over. Doc stood, walked to the window, looked out at the compound. He thought about his father, 23 years old, door gunner, dying in a jungle half a world away so his brothers could live. He thought about JJ, 24 years old, lying in a hospital bed, alive because Doc had stayed with her. He thought about promises made at graves, about cycles of violence, about sons fighting their father's wars. He turned back to Ahmad. Colonel Nguyen, did he ever talk about what happened after the war? Often, he said the Americans left. The Vietnamese won, but nobody celebrated because winning a war does not heal it. The land was poisoned. The people were broken. The victory was ashes. Ahmad's eyes were sad. He said if he had known the cost, he would have chosen peace. But by then it was too late. The wheel had already turned. And you, if you could choose again, I would choose my family. I would take my daughters and my wife and leave this place. Let the Americans and the Taliban and the warlords kill each other. I would choose life. Ahmad looked at his bandaged shoulder. But I cannot choose again. The wheel has turned. Doc pulled out his father's Zippo, held it where Ahmad could see the engraving. This was his, all I have of him. This and a photograph and a flag folded in a triangle. Ahmad nodded slowly. And what will your son have of you? I don't have a son, but you will, maybe, if you survive. And when you do, what will you leave him? Another lighter? Another flag? Another war? Doc didn't answer, because he didn't have one. Hawk stepped forward. Doc, Rangers are requesting medevac for prisoners, including Ahmad. What's your medical assessment? He needs surgery, debridement, antibiotics. He'll live if we get him to Bagram. Then we extract him. Ahmad spoke up. I have a request. You're not in a position to request anything, Hawk said. Nevertheless, I would speak with Master Sergeant Henley, alone for 5 minutes. Not happening. But Doc raised his hand. Give us the room. Doc, I can't leave you alone with him. He's wounded, unarmed, half my size. I'll be fine. Hawk looked at Preacher, at Ghost. They nodded. Trust. 5 minutes. We'll be right outside. They left, Doc and Ahmad, alone. 2 soldiers, 2 old men, 2 lives spent in war. Ahmad spoke first. Nguyen told me something about your father's helicopter, the day he died. Doc's chest tightened. What? The helicopter was shot down. RPG, it crashed. But your father did not die in the crash. He survived. Wounded. Trapped in the wreckage. The NVA soldiers approached. They were going to execute the survivors. And Nguyen was there, young lieutenant. He gave the order to execute, but then he saw your father. Saw him trying to shield his crew chief, trying to protect him even though both of them were dying. Ahmad paused. Nguyen said in that moment he understood. The Americans were not monsters. They were men. Like him. Fighting, dying for their brothers. So he killed them anyway? No, he ordered his men to withdraw, left the Americans alive, called in their position to American forces on an open channel, gave them a chance. Doc felt the world tilt. You're lying. I am not. Your father died from his wounds before the rescue arrived, but Nguyen tried to save him, tried to break the cycle. It was not enough, but he tried. Doc looked at the Zippo in his hand, his father's Zippo, the only thing he had left. Why are you telling me this? Because Nguyen taught me honor, taught me that enemies can still respect each other, taught me that war is not about hate, it is about grief, about loss, about the wheel that turns and crushes everyone underneath. Ahmad looked at him. You asked what you will leave your son. I am telling you, leave him peace. Leave him a world where the wheel stops turning. And how do I do that? By choosing mercy when you have the power to choose vengeance. By seeing your enemy as human. By breaking the cycle. Ahmad's voice was soft. I could not do it. I chose revenge. Chose to kill 60 of your countrymen because 60 of mine were killed. But it did not bring my daughters back. It did not heal my grief. It only created more. Doc was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. If I let you live, will you kill more Americans? If you imprison me, I will spend whatever years I have left in a cell. I am 52 years old. I am wounded. I am finished fighting. That's not an answer. Then no, I will not kill more Americans. The wheel stops here. With me. With you. With this choice. Doc looked at him, searching for lies, for manipulation. But he saw only exhaustion. Only a man who'd lost everything, who tried to fill the void with violence and found it empty. Doc clicked the Zippo open, lit it, watched the flame. His father's flame. Then he closed it, made his choice. He opened the door. Hawk, get Ahmad to Bagram, full medical treatment. Then I want him in a secure facility, not Guantanamo, somewhere with lawyers, with trials, with justice. Doc, are you sure? I'm sure. This ends with trials, not executions. We're better than that. Hawk nodded, keyed her radio. Overwatch Shadow 1, we have one precious cargo for immediate medevac. Priority 1. Patterson's voice. Copy. Bird inbound. ETA 5 minutes. The Rangers entered, secured Ahmad, carried him downstairs on a stretcher. Preacher approached Doc. You okay? Yeah, just tired. What did he say to you? Doc looked at his father's Zippo. He told me how to end a war. And how's that? By refusing to start the next one. The helicopter arrived. Black Hawk. Door gunners scanning. Pilots ready. They loaded Ahmad, strapped him in. Doc watched him go, watched the helicopter lift off. Bank. Disappear into the dawn sky. Beside him, Ghost spoke quietly. My grandfather told me something. After the war. After the camps. After everything. What's that? He said the hardest thing he ever did was not killing his enemies. It was forgiving them. Not for them, for himself. So he could stop carrying the weight. Doc nodded slowly, put the Zippo back in his pocket. The sun was rising over the mountains, painting the sky golden red. Beautiful. Indifferent to the blood that had been spilled beneath it. Hawk gathered her team. Shadow 1, minus JJ, minus the innocence they'd carried when this started. Let's go home. They walked out of the compound, past the bodies, past the bullet holes, past the evidence of war. Behind them, Rangers were securing the site, collecting intelligence, cataloging weapons. Sergeant Collins had 12 prisoners zip-tied and ready for transport. Ahead, helicopters waited to carry them back to Firebase Sentinel, back to hot food, clean water, sleep, back to whatever came next. Doc took one last look at the compound, thought about Ahmad, about Nguyen, about his father, about the wheel that had turned for 50 years, and the choice he'd made to stop it. He didn't know if it was the right choice. He only knew it was his choice. That would have to be enough. 6 months later, Walter Reed Medical Center, Bethesda, Maryland. Doc sat in the physical therapy room watching JJ work through her exercises. She'd been discharged from the hospital 3 months ago. Medically retired, 70% lung capacity, permanent shrapnel scars, Purple Heart, Silver Star. She'd never serve in combat again, but she was alive. Come on, Rodriguez, the therapist said. 10 more reps. JJ gritted her teeth, pushed through the pain, finished her set, sat down, breathing hard. Doc handed her water. You look good, kid. I look like hell, and I feel worse. You look alive. That's good enough. JJ drank, wiped sweat from her face. My dad came to visit last week. Gunny Rodriguez. You know what he said? What? He said he was proud of me. Not for getting shot, for surviving, for fighting to recover. Her eyes were wet. I thought he'd be disappointed that I couldn't finish my enlistment. JJ, you did 4 years, got shot saving American lives, earned Valor Awards. Your daddy has every right to be proud. What about you, Doc? You proud? Doc thought about that, about the 24-year-old corporal who'd stood up to adjust a radio antenna, who'd taken a bullet meant for someone else, who'd fought through pain and fear and trauma to still be standing. Yeah, kid, I'm proud. JJ smiled. You visiting preacher today? After this? He's at Fort Bragg, teaching at the chapel. And Ghost? San Diego, working at the VA hospital, helping vets with prosthetics. He always was the quiet healer. JJ paused. And Hawk? Retired, living with her family, husband and 2 kids. She sends Christmas cards. What about Ahmad? Doc was quiet for a moment. Trial starts next month, federal court. He's pleading guilty, cooperation in exchange for life sentence instead of death penalty. You think that's justice? I think it's closure. That's close enough. JJ stood, stretched, winced at the pain in her chest. Doc, can I ask you something? Shoot. Do you think we made a difference? All of it. The mission, the fighting, the people who died, did it matter? Doc thought about Firebase Cobra, 47 Americans who'd gone home alive. Thought about the ambushes that stopped, the lives saved. Thought about Ahmad in a cell, about the cycle broken. Yeah, it mattered. Good, because some days I wonder if I gave up my career for nothing. You gave it up for your brothers. That's never nothing. JJ nodded, gathered her things. Thanks for coming, Doc. It means a lot. Anytime, kid. She left. Doc sat alone in the therapy room, pulled out his father's Zippo, clicked it open. The flame burned steady. He thought about his father, about Colonel Nguyen, about Ahmad, about all the men who'd fought wars they didn't choose, in places they didn't know, for reasons that made sense at the time and none at all in hindsight. He thought about the promise he'd made at his father's grave, to serve with honor, to bring his men home alive. He kept that promise. 5 people went into the mountains. 5 people came back, broken, changed, scarred, but alive. That would have to be enough. Doc closed the Zippo, put it in his pocket, walked out into the Maryland sunshine. Somewhere in the world, another war was starting. Another generation was packing their gear. Another group of young soldiers was learning that courage and fear were the same thing. But that wasn't Doc's war anymore. His war was over. He'd survived it. More importantly, he had ended it with his soul intact. That was the hardest thing any soldier could do. Not winning the fight, but knowing when to stop fighting. Doc got in his truck, drove to Fort Bragg, to see Preacher, to check on Ghost, to make sure his people were okay. Because that's what sergeants do. They take care of their soldiers, long after the war ends, long after the medals are awarded, long after everyone else forgets. They remember, they care, they keep the promise. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison earned her Silver Star and commanded a company at Fort Campbell. She wrote Doc a letter every year on the anniversary, thanking him for Firebase Cobra, for the 47 souls who came home. And sometimes, on quiet days, Doc sat alone with a lighter that belonged to a man he never knew. And he whispered thanks for the sacrifice, for the lesson, for the chance to break the cycle. Doc Henley drove south, toward North Carolina, toward his brothers. Behind him, Walter Reed faded in the rearview mirror. Ahead, the road stretched long and empty. But it was his road, his choice, his life, earned in blood, paid for in pain, bought with the currency of courage. He was 58 years old. He'd served 32 years, 4 wars, too many friends buried, too many ghosts. But he'd kept his promise. He'd brought them home. That was enough. The lighter rested in his pocket, warm against his chest. His father's legacy, not of war, but of sacrifice, not of violence, but of love. The wheel had turned for 50 years, 3 generations, 3 wars. But maybe, just maybe, with this choice, with this mercy, with this refusal to continue the cycle, the wheel would slow, would stop, would let the next generation choose peace. Doc drove on, into the future, into whatever came next. A soldier going home, finally, at last, for good, end.